In this module, we are going to talk about data validations. Now, data validation is a feature which is used to control what users can enter into a cell. So normally, Excel would allow you to enter any value. There is no restrictions to the value you can enter into a cell in Excel. However, there are times when you want to validate your data once you pass that sheet to your user so that you can get more accurate and a correct data. It may so happen that if you have not given any validations, you get a worksheet with full of errors, The kind of data you wanted or the kind of validations you wanted was not there, and therefore the user entered whatever they felt like, whatever they understood by looking at the field. And when you're processing the data, it might throw a lot of errors. So you have to clean up your data before you actually process them. So that's a time-consuming job. Hence, upfront, if you can actually give the validations and restrict the users from entering invalid data as far as your business rules are concerned, then it's very easy for you to later process and analyze those data correctly, without losing much time. So therefore, data validation becomes very handy where you are taking input from the user and you don't want the user to enter corrupt data. So what data validations does, it allows you to dictate specific rules, and it also allows you to display custom message if user enters an invalid data. So that is very important, that it will allow you to enter a message saying that, see, you have entered an invalid data and it is not acceptable. So please retry and enter a correct data. And this is the data, or this is the validations which is there, and therefore you need to follow that validation and enter your data. So the need for data validation is that it is a process of examining the quality and accuracy of the collected data before processing and analyzing it of your data. Excel can restrict data entry to a certain cells by using data validations. So data validation is a technique by which you can restrict data entry. It prompts user to enter valid data. So it's not just give you error message whenever you make a mistake. Rather, when you are entering a cell to input data, at that point of time also you can give a message informing the user that there is a restriction to that cell, and therefore you need to give correct data. Otherwise, you will get an error message. If the user still makes the mistake, then of course he will get an error message later. Now, where do you get this data validations? It is under the data tab of your ribbon. So if you look at normally the home tab is the default one. So if you go to the data tab, and inside that data tab, in the data tools section, you will find data validation. Now this data validation is a drop down. Here you can get data validation. You click on that. And here you find 3 tabs. One is the settings tab, input tab, and alert tab. Now settings tab is where you will do the validation settings. Now by default, it allows any value. But you won't allow any value onto the cell. Why? Because you're going to validate your cell. So you have these options with you. One is, if you want to restrict your cell to have only whole numbers, without any decimal or without any text, only numbers, right? The whole numbers are there. Plus, after you have said that you want whole numbers, you can further restrict it by these rules. Like it should be between this, not between this, equal to, not equal to, greater than, and so on and so forth. If your sheet is accepting decimals, then you can select decimals and give the same number of criteria and set up those criterias. Then you can select the list. If you have some restricted values from where you need to select, like for example, you have a region, and from north, south, east, and west, these are the 4 regions from where you can select. If you give something else, it's an error. So you can give a list to the user, a drop down from where to select, and that's what list is. It's a cell drop down. It is a drop down, and this is the source. So you can hard code this source here separated by comma, or you can select the source directly from your worksheet, and that would be displayed as a list, and from there you can select. You can also have restrictions on date. You can have restrictions on time, on the length of the text you are entering into the cell, and if you want that the length of the text should be greater or have a minimum length of this or a maximum length of that, and that you can actually set. And of course, if all of them doesn't work for you, you can still have a custom formula based on which you can do the validations. So if these rules is of no help or your validation is still more complex, then you can use custom. And if you have a formula based criteria which you want to apply based on which you want to do the validations, then formula is where you will put it. In the input message, you can give the input message when the user is entering the cell. At that time, you can prompt with the title where you have the company name and the input message giving him details as to what kind of validations you have put onto the cell and what values you are accepting in the cell. If the user still fails to follow that rule, you can give him an error alert, telling the user that, see, there is a error with the title and an error message again, and it stops. It says either you can retry or cancel. There is no option to continue. But if you want the user to continue, that means you want to give a user a warning, telling that, see, this is a warning. I want the cells to have this value, but if you want to give other values, I'm ready to accept it. So these values which we have suggested is an ideal value, but still if you still want to give some other values, your custom values, that also we can accept. And that is a small warning or information, and in that case, you can give other values as well. So it depends on your business requirement, how you are actually dealing with it. Okay. So these are the certain options. Let's start with some example in the next video.